evening, everyone. Myself is Anuj Kumar, Assistant Professor in Computer Science and Engineering Department in Ajay Garg Engineering College. So today we have to be discuss the big data, and in the last lectures we have to be discuss the what is the big data, what are the different phases of the big data. Means we are defining the phase 1, that is in the era of 1970 and the 2000. Second one, we have to be define the phase 2, where we are using the web-based content, that is the 2000 to 2010, and in the third one, 2010 to till date, that we have using some mobile phones and we are using the IoT based sensor based technologies through which we can be produce the large amount of the data. And we have to be little bit define here the different type of the data. That is we have to be define 3 type of the data. One is the structured data, that is very in limited form and it will be only in the 10% of the total data. If we have to be defined about the semi-structured data, so again it will be only we have to be produce 10% of the semi-structured data, and remaining is 80% data is the unstructured data. So we have to be basically define explain different type of the data. So in the structured data means when we have to be stored the data, so we have to be use a predefined format. Means we have to be define the number of the row, number of the columns, and we have to be stored this data. So we have to be define a proper formatting. So it will be when we are talking about the structured data means predefined data models like the database. And we have to be, when we have to be used, it will be mainly stored in the test only. Limited amount of the data, so we have to be easy to search and filter this data. And the examples of the structured data is the date, phone numbers, transactions, information, etc. If we talk about the semi-structured data, means a combination of the structured data and the unstructured data. So it will be considerably easy to analyze than the structured data as compared to this. So it will be not be so hard how we have to be use this data, so we can be easily analyze the unstructured data. And the examples of unstructured data is like CSV file we are using the JavaScript object notations file. These are the examples of the semi-structured data. And in unstructured data means when we have to be stored the data. If we are talking about the structured data, we are using the number of the row, number of the columns like the database. But here there is no predefined data models when we have to be stored the data. And it will be the 80% means large amount of the data. So it is difficult to search this data, and then when we have to be used, it is difficult to store this data because it has the different type of the file format. Suppose we have some PDF file, we have to be some Word file, we have some image, we have some videos. So we have to be stored this data. And the example of this data is that is the social media data. If we have to be some audio files, we have to be some images file. So all these are known as the unstructured data. So in this we have to be defined is unstructured data means we have to be discussed here in the unstructured data, structured data and the semi-structured. So in the structured data we have using a table that is a form of the number of row and the number of column. So we have to be defined ID number, name, age and the degree. So all they have to be filled this data. So it will be built in the test form. So it is the example of the structured. As we have to be, so here the semi-structured, we are taking the example of the XML. So इसके examples हमारे XML and the JSON. So this is a XML file. So we can be say that this is an example of the semi-structured data. Here we have to be define the main root element, that is university. Then we have to be define the student number 1, his name, his age, his degree. जो हमने यहाँ पे define किया था name, age and the degree. So we can be define it into a XML format. Then we have to be define the student number 2, ID number 2, then its name, is age, its degree and so on. So it is an example of the XML type. But here when we are using the combination, we are not be using the test format only. We are using the mix up. So that is known as the unstructured data. Here we have to using some tests, then we have to be define the some value. Zone ID number is 1. Here we are using 18 years old and a whole day BSc degree. Means when we have to be declare this, there is no fixed format of this. So that will be known as the unstructured data. So if we have to be comparison according to the features of this data, so firstly we have to be defined, though we have to be use the some features. Firstly we have to be define number 1, that is the structure. So in the structured data we are using the format of number of row, number of the column. Means we have to be defined it use a fixed schema. But in the semi-structured, it will be combinations of some structured and the some unstructured. So means we are using define here, it will be use a partial data, that is we can be define some tags, we can be define the some keys. And third one we are using here, that is no predefined data. So here we are till now discussed about only the 3 type of the data. We have to be discussed here in later when we are talking about the real-time streaming data. So in the third one, unstructured data means there is no predefined structure. In the next one, we are using the storage. How we can be storage? So it will be use the relational database. It will be use the relational database, and we can be say that example of the SQL. Here they are using no SQL database. It is using the no SQL database. But here for stored large amount of the data, so it is 80% of the actual data. So it will be use some data lakes, या फिर use the HDFS means Hadoop distributed file system. We have to be discussed later ki how we have to be stored this data, we data lakes and the HDFS. In the third one, we have to be define the format. So it will be a combination of the number of row, number of columns. We can be define the tables. Here we can be define the JSON, XML file, some zip file, some logs file. All these are the example of the semi-structured data. In the unstructured data, we can be define the some text, some image, some audio, some videos. So these are the parts of the unstructured data. Next one, how we have to be process this data, processing of this data. Limited amount we have the limited amount of the data of the structured data. So it will be the easily. So it will be some structured, some unstructured, means it will be moderate. But here in the third one, all the data are the different file format. So it is very difficult to process this data. And last, we have to be define the examples of the structured data, banking records, payroll, a proper file format. When we have to be send some money or apply some transactions, our internet banking or bank account, so it will be a proper format. Second one, in the semi-structured data, we have to be define the emails or some web logs file. And in the unstructured data, we are using the social media and post and the videos. So we have to be discussed here the streaming data in later, but we have to be go through a differentiate here. Again, we are using the when we are using streaming, that is a streaming data. So it will be the continuous real-time flow. It will be continuous real-time flow is a streaming data. And for this, they are using how to store. They are using the Kafka, Spark streaming. When we are using the streaming data, so they are using the Kafka and the Spark. So they are the methods, technology, how we have to be stored this data. And next one, they are using the sensor feeds, they are using the live logs, they are the different file format. And it is very complex when we have to be processed, stored and execute the real-time streaming data. For example of this is stock marketing, and we have to be sensor-based IoT data. So these are type of the streaming data. So in short, if we are talking about the stock marketing data or IoT sensor devices, they are using the streaming data. Now we have to be move the history of the big data innovation. So in the advent of the big data analytics, we have to be a response to raise of big data that start in the 1990s. Very long before the term big data was conceived, and the concept will apply to draw the computer age when business use large spreadsheets to crunch the numbers and find the trends. So for this we need a large amount of that data that is created in the 1990s and early in the 2000 was flooded by the new data sources. When the popularity of the mobile devices and search engine created the more data than the company knew what to be the with. And next one, they have to be focused on the speed with another factor. So the factor that data was made, the more it has to be handled. So in 2005, जो भी tables भी we have to be define a table. The Gartner explained there are the 3 V's of the big data, means we have the different variety of the data. We have to do the large amount of the data, and we have to be mean the velocity of this data. So basically they have to be focus here if they are using the large amount of data. If we have the large amount of the data, it means it has different variety of the data. And when this has, if we have to be processed here, so we have to be define the velocity, means we have to be take the less time. So there are the basic 3 V's of the big data. V's here all are started from the V's. The first one is the different variety of the data. Second one means large amount of the data, that is known as volume, and third one means as the velocity. So this is the history of the big data that we have to be discussed here. If we talk about through it in this diagram, in the starting 2002, there are the 2 person they have using thinking about how we have to be stored the big data, large amount of the big data. That is the Doug Cutting and the Mike Kerfila is starting the working on this. And in 2008, they find they are working in a Google, and for this they are here published the GFS and the MapReduce papers. On this we have to be how we can to be produce the large amount of the data. So in 2004, the Doug Cutting added a DFS and the MapReduce to the nudge, and same here in 2005, 2006 they have to be join the Yahoo, and in 2007 they have to be increase this amount of the data, and in 2008 they are using the Facebook, means a large amount of the data when they have to be used. So we have to be use some Hive and SQL format of the Hadoop. Then in 2008 they are using the Cloudera. In 2009 they have to be do. So basically this is a diagram from starting to how we have to be discussed or how we have to be used in 2025. So we have to be discussed all of these in another lectures. What are the different suppose here we are using the MongoDB, HBase, Apache Kafka, Spark, data lakes. So we have to be discussed here in the next lectures what is the meaning. So basically simply here we have to be define the different type of the technology, the different type of the data when they have to be produced the large amount of the data. So in 2002 to 2025 we have to be use the different type of the technologies when we have use, process and store the unstructured data. So we are talking about the big data characteristics. So first one we have to be basically we have to be the 5 V's, but we can be define the various type of these 5 V's are the means we have the size of the data that is defined as the volume. Second V is the velocity, means speed at which the data is generated. Third one means the variety, means the we have to be the different type of the data. Then veracity means data, we need the data accuracy, and next we have used the values, means useful data. So there are the we can be defined that there are the basically 5 V's of the big data, and these are the volume, velocity, variety, veracity and the value. But here we can be also define some more, that is the validity, that is the variability, that is the venue, that is the vocabulary, and that is the vagueness. So we have to be defined basically these are the 5 V's of this when we are talking about the big data. So this is a diagram from all the source towards the data science. If we are talking about the data science, then we have to be considered again this. But if we are talking about the big data, so we have to be basically focus on the 5 V's of this data. So we have to be comparison the big data and the data science. So we have to be considered some factors. First one is the concept, means big data means when we have to be handle the large amount of the data. Data science means now we have to be analyze this data. So we can be say that this is a part of the data science. Second one, what are the responsibilities? Means in big data, we have to be stored huge amount of the data. So how to be processed and to be generate this data. So it is the responsibility how we can be process and the store this data. And in the data science, we are using the understand the pattern within the data, and the based on this pattern within the data, we have to be make the some decision. So that is a part of the data science. In fourth one, we have to be define in the, if we are talking about the industry terms, we have to be use the e-commerce, security services, telecommunications. These are the part of the big data. But if we explain our sales, image recognition, advertisement, risk analytics, so all these are means we have to be analyzed. We are using some technique on the big data, and we have to be define it, suppose through a graph, through some tables. So this is a part of the data science. If we talking about what are the tools we are using here, so here we are using Hadoop, Spark, Flink, Flume. There are the various tools that we have to be used here to store this data and to process this data. So these are the parts of the big data. But here we are using some language, we are using Python, we are using R, we are using SEC, through which we have to be analyze the data. All these are the part of the data science. So the big data refers to store, manage and process large amount of the data, while data science focus to analyze and interpret this data to increase and make a informed decision. So means if we have to be apply the data science, so it is mandatory we have to be need the large amount of the data. If we have to be large amount of data, if suppose we have a limited amount of the data, so it is not be, we cannot be say that we have to be achieve or we have to be take the good decisions based on the limited amount of the data. If we have to be the large amount of the data, and that will be in a different form. When we have to be analyze and interpret this large amount of data, so we can be increase or we can be find out something, and that will be helpful to manage a informed decision. So that's why we are using the big data.